Live from the Counterpunch Media Mobile Studios in Grand Blanc, Michigan. It's time for real lives, real families, real fitness. It's time for Derek Noel Fitness.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 39 of Derek Noel Fitness Live. As you can tell, it is at home edition because we are still in Michigan on the stay home, stay safe order. So we're doing our show from here, and I figured what better way to pass the time tonight than to knock out some Q&A for some different questions that people have asked me over the period of time since I've basically last done a Q&A. I think a lot of these are actually going to be very helpful. I tried to kind of group them so they will all be together and kind of flow, but if not, honestly, I'm not super worried about it. That is one of the perks of a Q&A session. If you're watching, make sure you drop in and say hello on the thread. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, if you could give this a like, that would be awesome. Maybe share this channel with your friends. That would be great. We are moving through this time, and it can be fairly difficult. I know I took last week off of the show, and I really hope that people actually did take the 30 minutes that they would be normally spending watching this and doing something that would be a little bit productive, whether it was finding a hobby or getting a little extra sleep or meditating or stretching or anything like that. That will do a really good part. And real quick before I get into the Q&A, one of the reasons I wanted to do that, I know that some people watch this show every time I go on, and sometimes it's just a good idea to disconnect from everything going on and finding those things where you can turn your brain off for a little bit. So whether it's watching the show or whether it is finding that hobby that you really like to do, that it just allows you to take your mind off of things, this is definitely a period in time where a lot of people really need that. So hopefully you are trying to find ways, if you're living here in Michigan or you are dealing with this, which almost everybody is at this point in time, hopefully you're finding a way to keep yourself busy in a kind of sort of productive manner. But if not, you're just doing what you can to get through. So it's totally cool. Keep up what you're doing, and just keep on keeping on, in the words of good old Joe Dirt. As always, if you have your questions, please drop them in the thread. If you don't want to ask them publicly, that's totally cool. You can shoot me a private message. I do have my phone here watching the thread so I can respond to people as they're going through. So please, please, please ask questions. This is a dedicated question and answer show. And if you come up, or if you ask me something, I'll be sure to answer it over things that I just had pre-written. I would really, really like for this to be an interactive show, so do not hesitate to ask. And it could be basically about anything health or fitness related, which is awesome, or nutrition. Everything works. Nutrition and working out, I think, are the two hardest things out of this whole thing for a lot of people. So any questions you might have for me, I can probably spitball and answer fairly accurately for you. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into this. Also, make sure you share this stream, get it out to as many people as possible. That would be great. So episode 39 here of Derek Noel Fitness, and we're going to get started in some Q&A. And Heidi said, lifting some heavy crap. Yeah. That is one of the things that I wish I had the ability to do here at home, but it's bodyweight workouts on top of bodyweight workouts for me, which I can talk about later if you'd like me to. So the first question I have is, how do you break through a strength plateau? So first off, let's define what a strength plateau is, and that is when basically your strength stops going up. It doesn't necessarily go down, but it kind of tapers off. So what that can look like is, say you have a back squat and you're back squatting super consistently, and then all of a sudden you just hit a wall where that number won't go up anymore. And it can be 135 pounds, it can be 185 pounds. There are some powerlifters that'll hit a limit at like 400 pounds. It really doesn't matter what the number is, but you hit that point. So let's say you hit 185 pounds and a month's gone by, you've worked on your squat 2 times a week for the past month, and it's just not going anywhere. How do you get that number to start going up again? Well, there are actually a few different things that can be going on there. First off, we need to look at your volume of training because it might be something as simple as you are working too hard, or if you are only squatting like 2 or 3 reps. So if you're just working up to the 185 and you're calling it good and you're never trying to go anything past that, or you're not doing any work below that, you might not be doing enough work. So it can be a couple different things there. And it might be a simple solution as backing off the weight a little bit. So if you're consistently trying to just hit that 185 and it's never going up, one of the best things you can do, honestly, is to drop that to maybe 150 and do a couple more reps, or do a few more reps than you would be able to do at 185, and make sure you have really good form, and that might fix itself. Or it can be a form thing where just the way that you're doing your squats probably isn't an optimal version of it, and all of a sudden your body in the way that you were squatting is just hitting a wall. There are plenty of different things going on with this. So how to break through a strength plateau, you can do a ton of different things. There's no one size fits all. That's where progressive overload comes into play, which means basically like you try and add just a little bit more every single time, whether that's a 2.5 pounds or 5 pounds or anything like that. You start lower weight and then you just add, which honestly might be a really good way to break through a strength plateau, is to drop down to about, so say that 185 is your absolute maximum weight that you can do. Dropping down to about 70% of that and doing something like a 5x5, so 5 sets of 5 reps, starting at 70% of that, and then just adding 2.5 or 5 pounds. And if you ever hit a point where you can't get 5 sets of 5 with the weight, then you stay at that weight the next week and then you hit that. And then if you're still hitting that, then it's time to definitely also look at our nutrition too. The nutrition plays a pretty big role in it, but for the most part, as long as you're eating enough, you're probably going to be good to continuously get stronger, especially if you're within your first 6 months, a year and a half of training. So keep that in mind. Which brings me to the question of how heavy should you lift? The answer to that is however heavy you feel comfortable lifting. For someone like me who's a meathead and a power lifter at heart, I love being able to max out, and if I could max out and do a 1 rep max on my deadlift every single week, which by all means I could, then I would definitely do so. Same thing with the squat, and I actually did do that. I squatted every single day, worked up to I used Corey Gregory's squat every day protocol, which is low volume, but you squat heavy every single day, and I was hitting like a daily 1 rep max for 2 months straight. I've done it. It does work in terms of getting stronger, but my knees were also not super happy with me. I remember being at work and I had to go get things off the ground, and my knees were just moving because they were just always sore. Not like I'm gonna get hurt, but they were just always, all the muscles around my knees were really sore. So how heavy should you lift? You should, there is a such thing as not lifting heavy enough as well for a lot of things, because your body, the reason that you get stronger is your body makes an adaptation. It adapts to whatever it thinks it's going to need for the next time. So if you are always using a 5-pound dumbbell for curls, for example, eventually you're going to stop getting stronger from using the 5-pound dumbbell. Simply because your body doesn't need to adapt for the amount of work that it's doing or for the load that it's trying to do. So it's going to get used to it, and you're going to be just fine that way. So keep in mind whenever you are lifting, you should never go heavier than you would be able to do good form with, which we call those bro reps, where they are, for example, a deadlift, you should have a nice straight back, and you shouldn't be just tearing and ripping that bar off the ground and your spine going every which way. And that's not good. That's not healthy. That's how you're going to lead to injury. That's how people mess up their backs, things like that. You want to be able to lift as heavy as you can with good form, or as light as you can with good form, or as light as you want with good form. Anywhere in there, there's that. And some people think that when you lift heavy, you are going to get very bulky. There are two things wrong with that. Number one, no, you're not. Number two, you have to be in a very high calorie surplus in order to build muscle, because that getting bulky is building muscle, and in order to be building muscle, you need to be consuming a lot of calories. For me to get bulky, for example, I have to eat about 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day consistently for a few weeks, or for, honestly, a few months, because muscle gain is a very, very slow process. So when you lift heavy, it doesn't mean that you're going to get bulky. If you're lifting heavy and you're in a calorie deficit, it means you're doing what you can to try and maintain the muscle mass that you have. And that's actually one of the best suggestions I have for people who are trying to lose weight, is a small calorie deficit and strength training. Not high intensity interval training, not going and sitting on a treadmill for an hour, not doing yoga or Pilates, just good old fashioned strength lifting. However that looks, cool. We're going to move on there. When you're lifting heavier, the next question I have is actually about muscle recovery. And this person was asking what the best tips for muscle recovery are. You should be able to move at the end of the day or 2 days later. You should be able to move. So if you have a leg day and you can't walk for a straight week, and it impacts everything, and it impacts your ability to work out for the next 4 or 5 days, that means that you went a little bit too hard. The goal when you're working out is not to absolutely destroy your body. You're trying to take care of your body. You're trying to get it to adapt, to become stronger. So when we are constantly just wrecking ourselves, when we're always sore, we're going to start dreading and resenting going to work out instead of really feeling like we're thriving and getting better at something. And we're under-recovering, and when we're super sore, our movement patterns aren't going to be as good. Our range of motion is not going to be as good, and those things combined can also lead to injury. So you want to make sure that you aren't getting so sore that you can't walk or you can't bend your arms for a week. That definitely means you went a little bit too hard. That being said, you're probably going to naturally be a little bit sore. A little bit of muscle soreness is good. You have something called DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness. And that's when say you're doing curls and you haven't done curls in a long time. That's when your arms are just super sore the next couple days, or they're not, again, they shouldn't be super sore. That's when they're sore the next couple days. It's because when you're working out, you're tearing those muscle fibers, and in order for them to recover, they need to be rebuilt. So what you're feeling is the delay of basically you're tearing your muscle fibers. If you are specifically looking for that, you will get a lot more of the DOMS, again, delayed onset muscle soreness, it's called DOMS for short. You'll get a lot more DOMS on the eccentric part of a movement, which means the lowering part of the movement. Again, in the example of a curl, we have two portions. We have the concentric, and then we have the eccentric. The concentric is that pull motion, that strength motion, or what people think is the strength motion, where you're pulling that weight up. And then you have, technically up top, you have an isometric, which means the muscle is working, but it's not moving through a range of motion. So it's holding a set position under strain. And then we have the eccentric, which is where we are lowering the weight. Number one, you can handle a lot more weight when you work with the eccentric, which is another way to get through strength plateaus. But it also tears the muscle fibers a lot more effectively, which means you do a lot more damage to the muscle on the eccentric than you do the concentric. So people who are just flying through the reps, only doing the ups and ignoring the down, especially if you're hitting a strength plateau that way, I'm going to recommend slowing it down. Do 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up, do 3 seconds down and a pause in that isometric hold, doing those different things. But those things will make your body a lot more sore. So if you feel like, and if mentally you just feel like you have to run yourself into the ground and you need to have that feeling of not being able to move for 5 days afterwards, that's going to be a more effective way to do it. But I do highly recommend you turn the volume down. So if at most you go, oh yeah, I definitely feel that workout. Again, you should be able to raise your arms up. As funny as it is, and as much as I joke around about it, you shouldn't have to have your chin tucked down in your T-Rex arms trying to wash your hair in the shower because you just destroyed your shoulders and your arms. So keep that in mind. Let's see. Chris, perfect timing, right as I picked it up. Chris is asking, with most of us having to work out at home, how can someone work up to certain body weight movements that they may not be used to, push-ups, pull-ups, etc.? Well, first off, the internet is a great tool. We're on the internet right now. It's how a lot of us are actually getting through this. And especially a lot of people don't have push-ups from their toes, so I'm going to focus in on that one. So if you've never done a push-up before in your life and you don't think that you're going to be able to do any of them, you want to make sure that you have really good form for those push-ups. As an aside, if you would like me to do form videos, I could totally bust out a couple of those tomorrow and post them. I need reminders. So if you would like to see that, drop it in the comments and I can make sure to do that. I'm talking about basic bodyweight exercises. But being able to work up into those movements, the easiest way to start doing a push-up if you've never done one before is to either go against a wall or go against a counter and have your hands on the edge of the counter and lower your chest down to the counter and then push yourself back up. And doing that at a counter, you're going to be at a pretty high angle. If that is still too difficult to do, you just go to a wall, you lay yourself basically against the wall, and then use your arms to push yourself back up. And with that, by the way, make sure your feet are away from the wall. If you're up against the wall all the way and then you push, you're just going to fall backwards. Don't fall backwards. So being able to know how to properly scale these exercises. Doing a pull-up is one that is very, very difficult for a lot of people who have been working out for a while. And doing something like a row, which you can actually refer to the last episode I did where I went through Arnold's at-home workout because he showed a way to be able to do rows at home with a broomstick and a couple chairs, being able to do rows that way. Those are an awesome way to build strength in the lats and the back to be able to get that movement in. You can also do something like a jumping pull-up if you happen to have a pull-up bar. I don't necessarily trust the pull-up bars that you put like in door frames because a lot of walls can't actually handle that strain. But if you have a pull-up bar that you can use, or you have a rig in your basement or anything like that, doing a jumping pull-up where you use your momentum and you jump up and you try and hold. And again, we're taking advantage of that eccentric and you can lower yourself down. So there are a ton of different ways to be able to move into those exercises. Or another example is if someone hasn't done a squat since they were 5, basically, because ask any 5-year-old to do a squat and it will be the most beautiful squat you have ever seen in your life. But a lot of people who are squatting should honestly probably start with box squats, where you have a platform or a box behind you and you sit down and then you stand up and slowly you can lower that box down. There is, I forget who it was, but he trained Olympic weightlifting for years. Actually was training Olympic weightlifting back when they did the clean and press instead of the clean and jerk. And he was training a 75 or an 80-year-old how to do a back squat. And he ended up using a box and had him go down because, 75, 80-year-old who's never worked out before is not going to be very mobile in general. And he had them start with a box squat on like a 30-inch box. So literally the guy was squatting down like 1 or 2 inches, and then slowly he brought that box a little bit lower and a little bit lower and a little bit lower, and eventually that 75, 80-year-old was dropping down into basically a full squat and then standing back up. So there are a ton of ways to be able to build through that, which brings me to another question, which on my list, by the way, which is how to improve squat mobility. Honestly, squat more. If you have a ton of knee issues, do box squats. That usually helps out. A lot of times with the knees, we want to make sure everything is strong around them. And when we're feeling our knees not doing super well, it's usually something's weak inside of there, or you've already done damage to your knees and they just hurt all the time. But again, that pain is a signal that something's wrong and should probably try and do something to fix it. That was a really good question though, Chris. I'm glad you asked that. But also how to improve squat mobility, we have to think of a few different things. When we're squatting, it's something called a compound exercise, which means that there is more than one joint. Whenever you hear the word a compound exercise, it is a multi-joint exercise. So a pull-up is a multi-joint exercise because my elbows and my shoulders are involved. So, and technically if you want, you can say the wrist is, because that's the basically just above that is the connecting point. In the squat, we have our hips, our knees, and our ankles, which are all working in unison. sometimes the coordination is very poor, which is going to limit it. And it might just be a simple fix, as in if I tell you to shove your butt back just a little bit before you drop down into a squat instead of going down. Because if you only bend at your knees, then you're doing a knee extension, you're not doing a squat. And if your ankle or your hip mobility isn't very good, so if your ankles can't bend very well or move through their full range of motion, or your hips aren't very open, and again, it's a lot more complicated than this. I could probably spend like 3 episodes just talking about the squat and mechanics of it, but we want to be able to make sure that they're doing that. So are we doing things to stretch our hips, to stretch our posterior chain, to stretch our glutes, to make sure that our ankles have a full range of motion, doing things like calf raises, to make sure that we have the stability in our core to be able to hold our own body up when we're going down into that motion, so that we're not just caving in and letting our chest fall towards the ground. All of these things come into play. Again, I can do multiple episodes talking about squats. Let's see, next up, actually, we are going to take a quick break. I believe that should be a good plan.
You're listening to Derek Noel Fitness here on IPMNation.com/counterpunch. He'll bring the smarts. Now the sweat? Well, that's up to you.
All right, and we are back. It's a little bit late for a break. I just need to get a quick sip of water because I've been talking nonstop for about 22 minutes now. Let's see, next question we have, do you need pre-workout? Short answer is no, you do not need it. The long answer is it depends. If you're someone who is just starting working out, pre-workout is definitely not a necessity at all. If you're just constantly exhausted when you're working out, I would probably look at your sleep first. But a lot of times when people need the pre-workout, they use it for energy. And one of the quickest and cheapest ways to get energy is to drink something like tea or coffee. And that little energy burst will help out. And there are actually a lot of studies that show, I think it's like 80 to 100 milligrams of caffeine before, like 15 to 20 minutes before a workout actually improves performance. So there is a good scientific backing for drinking caffeine before a workout. That being said, you don't need to. If you're not a coffee person, that's fine. Originally, pre-workouts were made to be able to, well, originally there weren't even pre-workouts, there was just different cocktails of things. So people started taking beta-alanine because they found that it started improving vascularity in their muscles, which meant that more blood flow was available. So when you take beta-alanine and you get those tingly sensations, it is improving the blood flow to those areas. If you have more blood flow, more oxygen flows. If you have more oxygen, more energy can be burned, and the more blood you have, also the more nutrients that go in and the more energy that can be created. So it improves performance. It improves the ability to lift things. You can go a little bit longer and things like that. So if you've been working out for a while and you really just need a pick-me-up, I would use pre-workout, and that's how I use pre-workout now. I use it as a little pick-me-up if I need it, but I don't necessarily need to have it. And that's coming from someone who did religiously take pre-workout every single time he worked out for years. Eventually your body will also get used to it, so that's when you see people taking like 4 scoops of C4 and they wonder what year it is, and they start seeing sounds and things like that. You want to make sure that you maintain a tolerance. I'm using the opportunity. I'm down to drinking only like 2 cups of coffee a day from all of the other crap I was drinking to be able to taper myself off on that. Kristen's saying, I like those pillows. I will make sure that the person responsible for these pillows knows that you enjoy them. Yeah, nice at home one. So again, you don't need pre-workout. What you're looking for in there is you're looking for beta-alanine, you're looking for protein. A little bit of them will have creatine, but creatine honestly doesn't matter so much if you have a post or pre-workout. There are a couple other things, other stuff you should avoid. I don't really want to get super into it, but just know that there is a such thing as too much, but dosing is also a big thing. And again, you can just Google like proper dosing of different chemicals like beta-alanine, because you'll find that like the maximum daily dose is like 8 grams, and most pre-workouts only have like 2. So you can find things that have like higher dosages depending on what you actually need. And yeah, that's a big topic. How do you improve grip strength? Honestly, by holding things in your hands over and over again. Hanging off of bars. So I'm going to use a nice example of if you're trying to hang off of a bar and you go, oh man, my hands are just sweaty. I feel it sliding and slipping. That's honestly doesn't have anything to do with your hands being sweaty. It has everything to do with your grip strength failing and your grip strength not being able to hold those things. So one of the best things you can do, my top 2 are actually trying to do a active hang off of a bar, which means hanging off of the bar. I like going false grip because then my thumb and this front part of my forearm doesn't get super tired super fast, and I can rely on my actual grip strength in my forearms, because by the way, when you close your hand, that is set by your forearms. There's not really anything in your hand that is that strength. That's all forearm strength, so it's building that. Hanging off of a bar for time, doing a couple rounds as long as you can, or doing farmer's carries, so picking up a very heavy weight and trying to walk with it. And you want to be able to keep your chest tall. You don't want to be hunched over anything. Nice, tall, broad chest, shoulders back and squeezed, and basically back is being squeezed and pencil between the shoulder blades, and walking, again, with that false grip, which means thumbs are tucked up by your index fingers instead of wrapped around the bar. They're wrapped in with the index fingers, kind of like, so your hands look like hooks, and then walking around like that. Those are 2 of the biggest things. And that's usually why I program them. If I know that grip strength is a thing, I want to make sure that it's getting hit. Let's see, how much time do we have left? We got 3 minutes left. And Chris was also saying that too much pre-workout can cause kidney stones. Yeah, too much of a lot of different things can cause kidney stones. Heidi is saying farmers carries suck. That's only because I make you do them, Heidi. And they are great. And you will thank me later for them, as much as you don't like them right now. Sometimes you got to do things that you don't want to do, which brings me to another question: what to do when you lose motivation? Just do it anyways. Especially when it comes to working out, you need to think of the bigger picture. When you don't want to work out, you've lost the motivation to work out, you are allowed to have a couple day leeway when it comes to that. So if you just really aren't feeling the workout that day, okay, fine. I say do it anyways, because you're not always going to have motivation there. Your motivation isn't always going to be there. Then you need to fall back on discipline. And if you're not a very disciplined person, then you're not going to get into it, and then then it's just a big downward spiral, and you're just digging your own hole, and you're just going to start wallowing in your own negative thoughts. And the negative thoughts aren't going to breed anything positive. So make sure that you're doing what you can, keeping yourself disciplined. If you do, I say do at least 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the workout, and then after that, if you're just like, screw this, I'm not feeling it, either swap it out for something else or just call it a day. That's totally cool. Just put the effort in to stay disciplined. Even when that motivation's not there, that discipline can drive you and can keep you going on the path. Don't stray from the path. Let's see, I got time for probably one more question. Let's see. Should you work out if you are feeling sick? I have mixed feelings personally for that, so I'll get personal versus what you probably should do. Should you work out if you're feeling sick? Probably not. Should you do something? Yes. I'm not, when I say workout, I mean like break a giant sweat, knock your heart rate up to a high percentage, or put your body through a lot of strain. When you are recovering from, or when your body is trying to recover from being sick, it's already moving its resources to trying to make you not sick anymore. So when you are trying to just crush yourself in a giant workout, even though you're not feeling super well, you're really only doing yourself a disservice, and working out and physical activity can have an effect on your immune system. If you do a little bit, like say you hop on an exercise bike and you just do a little bit of active pedaling, that's not going to crush your lungs or make you cough your lung up because you're congested, then cool, jump on the bike, get that blood flowing. That's probably a good thing for you. Should you be doing like 20 sets of deadlifts to failure? Absolutely not. So just be aware of what's going on in your body when you're getting sick. For me personally, I go if it's sickness from my neck up. So if basically Sore throat is counted as neck, by the way, so if it's above the neck, I'm good to go, which means if I have a sore throat, I'm not working out. If it's from the neck down, I'm not, because the worst thing in the world is trying to do something and not being able to breathe or coughing up a lung because you're super congested and you decided to try and work out. I've been there. But the overarching theme of this one is, if you're going to work out, do it at home. Don't go anywhere. Do not risk getting someone else sick. Whether we are in the middle of a pandemic or not, please, if you are feeling sick, do something at home. Do not go to your gym. Do not spread your germs everywhere. Do not get other people sick. Again, we have a pandemic going on. That's just how life is right now. But even when we are not all in a giant pandemic, you shouldn't be going around with your germs getting other people sick. It's a very selfish thing to do. Don't be selfish. If you're feeling sick, just do a home workout. There are plenty of things to do. Again, reference the Arnold at-home workout. I've done that, and it will crush you for a couple days. It's a really, really good body weight workout. That is honestly all the time we have for today. We have had a great time. I've answered about 2/3 of the questions that were asked. If you have any other ones, please, please, please drop them so I can see them. I would love to be able to do more Q&A episodes like this, especially while we are under this stay home, stay safe order here in Michigan. And please do what you can to stay safe, keep other people safe. And if you want to check me out, you can go check, you can find me at the Derek Noel on Instagram. You can find me at facebook.com/the Derek Noel. You can find me on YouTube at Counterpunch Media, which is our YouTube channel. Please give that a subscribe. You can find good old Brian Brody, who actually got me into this show in the first place. He is back and rolling, and he's crushing it. So make sure you check him out as well. This has been episode 39. It has been lovely to talk and chat for the past 30 minutes with everybody. Have a great night.